Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel. Today we are going to talk about the red aggression cards from Shadows of the Galaxy, and this is going to be a limited review. So, these ratings are for pre-release and draft. Draft and pre-release don't always get the same ratings, and if they have different ones, I will let you know. But let's get started. We're going to briefly go over the grading system. S, that means you see this card and you should switch to the color. If you have a few options, like the card is so strong, you need to be switching over to that color in some way. A is just a really powerful card. It's going to draw you into the color. You're going to be wanting to play those cards. B are cards that you just always include. They're not insane, but they're good. You always include them. B cards should never be cut. That's really how you determine what a B is. C is like the bulk of your deck. They're just fine cards that are playable. Sometimes with really good pools, you'll be cutting some C cards. You're probably, ideally, not ideally, but you're going to have a bunch of C cards and you'll have to cut a few, and you'll have to decide which ones you don't like. D are the cards that we usually don't play unless we have a weaker pool, or we're they're sideboard cards. They're a little bit niche. You don't really know how to use them. And F is just terrible. You don't really ever want to play them. Your deck should almost never ever have an F card in it, unless just don't play F cards. They're bad in general. Okay, but yeah, let's talk about the cards because that's the fun part. So let's shift on over to one of our first cards. We're not gonna talk about Ruthless Resistance yet, but we're gonna talk about the leader Bossk. So Bossk is on his leader side is a 4/6. And it says, comes out on 5 resources. When you collect a bounty, you may collect that bounty again. Use this ability only once each round. And I can't scroll all the way for some reason, whatever. But as action, you can turn him sideways to deal 1 damage to a unit with bounty. So you can do that to your unit or their unit. And you can give it +1/+0 for the phase. So you probably don't, want to give their unit +1/+0. But you can always deal damage to their unit. And if you want to, you can kind of hurt your unit a little bit to give it that extra boost for the turn. There are a few bounty cards in the set. They're okay. I don't know. I actually like this leader's stats, like 5 resources 4/6, and then sometimes you get to double bounty, which is cool because there's a lot of cards that people are just playing right now that say when this dies, heal 5, or when this dies, draw a card. So you get to draw 2 cards when you kill those cards if your opponent's playing them. But Bossk is just a fine card. I don't think he's anything special. I'm actually going to give him a B rating, but I can really see this being a C. He's getting a B because he's just a lot better than I think his counterpart is in pre-release. He is the common, but so he's somewhere between a C and a B. It really depends on how often people play these bounty cards. There are a lot of them that they come out at 1 resource, 2 resource. We were talking about them. They say draw a card, and if the meta is people just love playing those cards, then I think Bossk gets a lot better because you can deal damage to them. You can collect their bounty twice. That's really good. But in a realm where people really aren't playing bounty stuff, he's just a whatever leader. Sometimes he'll do damage, but he's just a 4/6 body with the Underworld tag. So he's probably leaning more towards a C, but he has a cool art, so maybe we can bump that up a little bit. Next up, we got Kylo Ren. Cannot see his ability at all, but this unit on his... so he comes out at 4 resources, which is pretty quick. He's a 5/4, and he gets -1 for each card in your hand. Well, how do we get rid of that? You can see his hero abilities right here. You can turn him sideways, discard a card from your hand to give a unit +2/+0 for this phase. So you're effectively turning cards in your hand into 2 damage, which is you're doing it for no resources, so you're literally just turning a card into 2 damage. That's really, really aggressive. So I'm going to give this guy 2 different ratings. I think for pre-release, you probably don't want to be playing Kylo Ren unless your pool is absolutely insane the fastest. And even then, losing cards for 2 damage is actually not that great. So I'm going to give him a D rating. We don't really want to be playing Kylo Ren. Now I'm going to give him a C for pre-release. And if you get some of his synergies, some discard synergies that exist in the set where it's not really a negative then to be discarding a card, that you can use its ability in other ways, excuse me. So yeah, you'll give him a little bit better in draft when you can, utilize his effect. Again, he is a fast leader, but if you're not using his discard effect, he's probably only coming out with like 3 attack. He dies to like everything, and the force tag is not as relevant this set as the last one. There's not really many force effects in general, so you won't really be getting use out of that. So we're gonna give him a D. Kylo Ren, not the greatest. But let's get into the cards. Those are way more fun. First up, we got Dengar. It is a 1 resource 2/2 Underworld Bounty Hunter unit. When you play an upgrade on a unit, you may deal 1 damage to that unit. Great. You guys know that I don't like upgrades. If you've seen my videos before, they leave you open to getting 2 for 1. This card has the right stats for a 1-costed card, but in Star Wars Unlimited, you start with 2 resources. So if I'm only playing 1 card on the first turn of the game, this is actually going to be understatted by 1. It should either be a 2/3 or 3/2. So this card I'm going to rate overall as understatted, and I think his effect is pretty bad because if I'm playing any kind of upgrades, like I guess, you could be putting the bounty cards on your opponents, but we're going to go through the video, and I don't really like most of them. So, and to just do 1 damage is really not enough probably. So we're probably only putting upgrades in our units if we are playing them, and we're never doing damage to our units, most likely, unless we're trying to do a grit thing. But even still, like, it's pretty bad, and it's kind of niche. It's kind of out there. We're going to give this card a D. Like, you can kind of play it because it is a turn 1 play if you don't have many 2-drops, so that's why it's a D. But we're probably cutting it most of the time. Next up, we got Kylo's TIE Silencer. It is a 2-cost space unit, 3/2. Action, if this unit was discarded from your hand or deck this phase, play it from your discard pile. Here's one of those Kylo payoffs. This is a legendary, though, so very, very hard to get. This card is way better with Kylo, but even without it, I actually like an on-rate spaceship, especially one with 3 attack. So I'm going to give this card a B. It should always be in your deck. On-rate spaceships are great. It just can do 3 damage every turn. Think about A-Wing, except this card just always has the 3 attack, which is nice. And then it has like this, kind of an upside ability. If your opponent makes you discard or, some weird effects that go on through the game, you can also use its action effect. But yeah, an on-rate spaceship gets a B. Next up, we have the Death Watch Loyalist. It is a 3-cost ground unit, 3/3 Mandalorian tag, which is relevant, and it has grit. Sadly, only 3 defense, though, and it also comes with Overwhelm. This card is just whatever. I think it would have been way, way better if it was a 3/4, but 3/3s can die to 2-drops a lot of the time, right? 3/2s just kill them, and then you're getting value traded, which is never good, and we're not getting use of any of his effects. So, yeah, whatever. He's just a whatever card. I think because, has texts, and he's a 3/3, we'll still give him a C, but this is one of the C's that I feel like you might cut sometimes. He gets a lot better if you're able to buff his HP at all, but again, I'm not really an upgrade believer, but this card would be a pretty good upgrade holder if you guys wanted to play some upgrades. Next up, we got Punishing 1. It is a 3-cost 3/4 space unit. When an upgraded unit is defeated, you can ready this guy, but you can only do it once. I like this card because of its stats. It's an on-rate spaceship, which we like. A 3/4 is probably killing every other spaceship in living at its cost. Yeah, so pretty hard, annoying to kill. The red kill spell in this format does 3 damage and not 4, so this guy lives through that, which is cool. Yeah, I like this guy a lot. He also has this other ability that sometimes may come up. Even if it doesn't, I'm still going to give this card a B for its stats. Good job punishing 1. Next up, we got the Jango Fett, a 4-cost 3/6 Underworld Bounty Hunter unit. Both those tags are relevant. It is a 3/6. While attacking a unit with bounty, this unit gets +3/+0 and gains Overwhelm. So if you guys are playing those 0-costed, 1-costed bounty cards on your opponent, you're making this thing way bigger and also leaking some damage over to their face. And when this unit attacks and defeats a unit, draw a card. Wow, this card's pretty decent. Eek. I don't like that it needs to, attack things with bounty to get bigger, but attacking a defeating unit to draw a card is really powerful. This thing is like pushing A. It's a B to A. I think If you play none of the bounty cards in your deck, which is totally reasonable, I think it's probably a B. Very strong card, but you know, it only has 3 attacks, so it's not like it's killing a bunch of stuff. But, you know, if you do have some sort of bounty package or your opponent's playing bounty cards, this card will feel like an A. You know, so, well, maybe we'll give it a B+. If I had to make some in-between, couldn't decide ratings. Django is just a strong card. Like, you're always putting it in your deck. I don't know if it's really going to draw you towards the color, but, you know, it might in the end of the day. So this card is a very good card. Put it in your deck 100% of the time. Next up, we have a Wookiee, and he is a 5-costed ground unit to 3/7, has the Underworld Wookiee and Bounty Hunter tag. And when played, if an enemy unit has Bounty, you may ready this unit. On attack, choose a ground unit. You may deal 1 damage to it for each damage on this unit. This card has some serious upside if you are able to attack into something and it sticks around. And then we're able to attack and then all of a sudden just shoot ground units all the time. That's pretty insane. The problem is it comes out on 5. Yes, it doesn't die to anything, but our opponent can kind of ignore this card. Like, if they don't attack it, I'm going to be very incentivized to swing into one of their things to try to get his effect online for next turn. But then my opponent can either take initiative and kill it or just swing with one of their dudes left over, and it's probably going to die. Because of that, I'm only going to give it a C, but I can see this card taking over games if our opponent maybe misplays or you outplay them in some certain way. This thing sticking around like with like 4 or 5 damage on it and just killing every single thing your opponent plays for the rest of the game is absolutely stupid insane. That'd make this card like an S if it was able to do that all the time. I just don't have faith that our opponent will let that situation happen. So because of that, I'm giving it a C. I think it's just playable. I personally think I will cut this card sometimes, and I will not always include it in my list. So yeah, I will say, you know, in the sideboard, depending on how our opponent's deck looks, this card might look a lot better. You know, against very aggressive decks, ones that don't really play a high top end, this card probably, you know, gets some points, but again, it comes out on 5 resources, which is a little slow. Yeah. I will say that this card's actually kind of cool in Hero if you're playing it with Han Solo, because you can use his ability to make it cost 1 less, so then it only costs 6 out of Aspect. And it comes in at a 3/5 with 2 damage on it, and you know, 5 health is actually enough that I think it could live, and then it swings and does 2 damage. So I actually think this card could be played with Han Solo as well, and I think it would just be playable in that sense too. But, you know, keep an eye out for this card. It's going to be probably one of the best C's I ever talk about. All right, now we got Kylo Ren is a 6-cost, 6/7 force unit. Has the same effect as Rey, where if you know, control their counterparts, so if you control Rey, we can ignore his black aspect for a second. So, you know, we could be playing the leader Rey, and we could play Kylo for 6. Cool. But on attack, give a unit +2/+0 for this phase. If it's not a black unit, not an evil guy, also give an experience token to it. I think this one's a little bit worse than Rey. It's a legendary unit, so you're not going to be seeing it that much. 6-cost, 6/7 is nice. Those are cards that I probably always want to put in my deck because they are on curve. In draft and pre-release, guys, I really like playing things that have stats on curve. That's usually just how you win games, because if you're playing cards with stats on curve and your opponent isn't, you're just going to win the game through numbers. I think his effect is like whatever. You're probably just doing it to your single red cards, you know, or your whatever splash color you're playing with red. Like, it gets a little bit bigger and gets an experience token, so it's hitting like 3 larger. I mean, that's decent. Like, it's something. So like I said, like a 6/7 would be a C. This thing has some upside with it, so we're gonna end up with a B. And if you're playing red, this card should just probably always be in your deck. You can probably do some cool things with Kylo Ren. Next up, guys, we got who we got. We got the Pre-Vizsla. Hopefully I said that right. Is a 7 cost 8/7 Mandalorian Trooper. When played and on attack, which is nice, you may pay the cost of an upgrade attached to another vehicle unit. If you do, take control of that upgrade and attach it to this unit, if able. If it cannot attach to this unit, defeat it instead. This guy's cool. He steals shields and experience tokens, and you have to pay 0 for those, which is really nice. I don't know what else he could steal. He could do some weird things. I mean, he's probably not stealing bounty cards, but whatever. I like that it's a punish for our opponent playing like upgrades that seem strong, and then I just play this and take it. And even if you can't play it on this plate effect, our opponent can never really play upgrades again because I just attack and take them. This card, I actually really like its stats too, an 8/7. Like we're playing something statted correctly, but you know, things that are statted correctly that cost a lot are actually like really strong, because what's doing 7 damage? Nothing, right? There are like almost no cards in this game that attack for 7. So this thing has crazy health and then swings for 8. So I guess it attacks itself and then steals shields like on the side. I'm gonna give this card a B. Depending on how many shields your opponent plays, this card could go way up in value. Against a blue deck, it's gonna feel like an A, because it just takes their shield on play and takes it for the rest of the game. Even taking experience tokens, those are pretty nice too. This card's pretty good. I like it. Next up, we got Ruthlessness. I like this card's art a lot. Sadly, it's an upgrade. Cost 1, gives +2/+0. Attached unit gains. When this unit attacks and defeats a unit, deal 2 damage to the defending player's base. I got some problems with this card in that, like, it looks like it's like, incentivizing me to attack their units to deal extra damage to the base, but why don't I just attack the base? I mean, I just gave +2 damage to my units, so surely I want to just hit them in the face. It gives no health and wants me to attack units. That's like a weird combination to me, and it's an upgrade, so Ruthlessness is an F, but nice art. Yeah, don't run that card. It's bad. All right, Give Into Your Anger, a super weird card. Deal 1 damage to an enemy unit. Its controller's next action this phase must be an attack action with that unit, if able. It must attack a unit, if able. Now, I'm not exactly sure on the rulings, but I'm pretty sure because it says its controller's next action this phase must be. I assume they cannot pass or take the initiative. You guys can tell me in the comments below if I'm right, but if their next action must be to attack, that's what it sounds like to me. But let's see, to set this card all up, I need to deal damage to something, which if I kill a unit, hey, good job. But if I don't, it needs to attack me, which who cares? So then I need to have a unit on the field that I want it to attack into. It seems like a really backward removal spell, and I'm really confused on how I would able to like get good value from this card. I really don't think I would be most of the time, and because of that, I think I'm going to give this card an F. Dealing 1 damage for 1 is terrible, and I just really don't know the situations and where like this card would just be absolutely insane. If you're like, hey man, it makes your opponent lose the initiative, you get them to attack, well then just don't play the card and take the initiative. I don't know, like, it could save your life, I guess. If your opponent has a big thing and you took the initiative and you're like, hey, your big thing needs to hit my unit now, yay. I guess it could stall in that way. Does that make it a good card? Something that stalls for a turn? Have you guys played Magic? Is Fog a good card? So I'm going to give this card an F. Just not crazy on it. Next up, we got Head Hunting. It is a 2-cost event. Attack with up to 3 units. Action condensing is usually good in this game. They cannot attack bases, though, for these attacks. And each bounty hunter that attacks this way get +2/+0. Let's say, like, top end, best case scenario, I'm hitting 3 bounty hunter units, and they're each getting +2/+0, and they're just destroying my opponent's units, I guess. Sad part is they're not getting any health, so they're taking the same amount of damage back. I can't hit the base, which is actually like a super downside. Like, do I really want to send 3 units into my opponent's units? I feel like I would want those to be hitting base. It's just not as good as its green counterpart from set 1. And I'm actually going to give this card an F. I don't like +2/+0 buffs. I think that's pretty bad. I think that if we were getting +6/+0, it'd be worth it, but not to attack units. So, bleh. F for headhunting. Next up, we have the Antagonizer. It's a 1-cost 2/3 Saboteur unit with bounty. These are, I think, in every color. There's at least one of them. Some low-costed card that has bounty. In the blue deck, it was like a 1/4 Grit with bounty draw card. And this one's a 2/3. I like 2/3. For 1, again, feels similar to 2 because if I'm only playing this card on turn 1, and then it's just a 2-costed 2/3, which is on rate. It has Saboteur, which is fine. The bounty drawing a card is like kind of a downside for it, though. So much so that I think this card goes from like a C to a D. I don't want to give my opponents free draws, and if I play this card later in the game, it's pretty bad, so I probably always have to resource it outside of the first 2 turns. So just a D. It can sometimes make your way into the deck, but we're probably going to be cutting it a lot of the time. Next up, we got the Trandoshan Hunters. It is a 5-cost ground unit, 6/4. Decent stats, has Overwhelm. When played, if an enemy unit has bounty, give an experience token to this unit. So, best case scenario, I got a 7/5 with Overwhelm. That's pretty good. A 6/4 with Overwhelm is fine. The problem is 4 defense for a 5-cost means it can die to a lot of 4-costed cards. And because of that, I'm just going to give this thing the playable rating. It has this nice upside where you could get a 7/5 and with Overwhelm and do some serious damage to things. But again, that's just like, I don't know. That's just fine. It's not really impacting the board. So we're just going to give it a C. And yeah, guys, that's all the black-red cards. So let's move on to the, did I say black? Yeah. Let's move on to the white-red. And our first leader is the Mandalorian girl, Bo-Katan Kryze. Sorry, guys, have not seen her in the show. Do not know how to pronounce it. One day I'll watch it. It is a 6-cost 4/7 Mandalorian leader that says, on attack, you may deal 1 damage to a unit. That's nice. If you attacked with another Mandalorian unit this phase, you may deal 1 damage to the same unit, another unit, just a unit in general. And then her leader side, or whatever, when she's not deployed, is if you attacked with a Mandalorian unit this phase, deal 1 damage to a unit. That's a pretty good effect because it doesn't cost any resources. The problem is you need to attack with the Mandalorian unit. So, before we move on, I can see that I have 1, 2, 3 Mandalorian units in this color. If I were to peek at, the future really fast. So, your deck's this card is way, way better in draft than it is pre-release because you're able to accumulate more Mandalorian cards. I think in a draft format, this leader could go all the way up to an A if you have a lot of Mandalorian cards. I think in a pre-release setting, it's just going to be fine. I think you might have a 2 to 3, maybe 4 Mandalorian cards, so you'll get her effect sometimes. Her leader side is totally respectable, though. A 4/7 that pings on attack is decent. So this is just a playable card, but again, in heavy Mandalorian pools, she becomes very, very good, all the way up to an A in my opinion. I mean, if your entire deck was a Mandalorian, then sure, she can be an S. If you're able to draft the God Mandalorian draft. But yeah, this effect is strong, guys. It just has that prerequisite that we might not always have. As opposed to Han Solo, he's the generic specialist. He is a 5-costed leader, 3/6, and action, play a unit from your hand. It costs 1 less, but it takes 2 damage. You can also use that same effect while it's on its other side, where you can just tap him and play a unit from your hand. It costs 1 less, deal 2 damage. Please note that on its deploy side, that you can do this multiple times in a turn. So, if it's on turn 5, you could play 2, 3 costed cards. They would cost 4 only, and then you could play a 2-cost card that costs 1. I don't know, if you want to just hurt your guys a lot. Han Solo, this card's going to be insane and constructed. I think a little bit weaker in pre-release and draft format. We don't really want to be damaging our cards. Even if they have grit, I much rather my grit cards take damage from killing one unit and then, getting bigger, as opposed to me just hurting them myself. It's not like they're coming in untapped either, so our opponent can just make easy work of them and value trade us. Even if we're cheating out better cards early, they're not that much better anymore because they have 2 less health, right? So yeah, I think that Han Solo is a common leader. You're going to be playing him sometimes when we're playing red. And I'm just going to give him a C. He's perfectly playable. Sometimes we can cheat out some very powerful cards for 1 turn early, but most of the time, I don't know if we really want to be using his effect to hurt our cards. I will say that it makes our hands a little bit more quality, because if you do miss a curve, you can use his effect to, effectively not miss that curve. If you don't know what I mean, like if, we have 3 resources, but I only have a 4-drop in my hand, then I can actually play that 4-drop. So it actually increases our hand quality at all times in the game. But yeah, so next up we got Ketsu Anyo, sure. Is a 2-costed ground unit 3/2, has the Mandalorian tag and the Underworld tag and the Bounty Hunter tag, so a lot of tags there. Has Saboteur, which is fine. A lot of shields in this format, so it's a little bit better than last set. When this unit deals combat damage to a base, you may defeat an upgrade that costs 2 or less, which I really like. I like that you can ignore that Sentinel shielded unit because it has Saboteur and then take out the shield still, which is pretty cool. I like this card a lot. I think it is something that always goes in your deck because it costs 2 and is a 3/2. So, it has the stats for the beginning of the game and it has an upside effect. So we're giving this card a B. Let's go. Starting off strong. Next up, we got the Night Owl Skirmisher. It is a 3-costed ground unit 4/3 with the Mandalorian tag and has Smuggle. Nice. This card is the definition of playable, right? It has on-rate stats, and I can smuggle it in the late game. Sometimes you might say, hey, the smuggle thing pushes it to a B. Spencer, what are you thinking? And maybe it does. I'll say if your hero is Bo-Katan, Kryze, whatever the name is, this card is definitely a B because it has Smuggle and with the Mandalorian tag. When you start mixing these packages together, the cards go up in rating. But if we're just playing this in any random deck, I think it's just a playable card. It's not doing anything special besides having that Smuggle tag. Next up, we got Koska Reeves, is a 4-costed ground unit 4/5, again with the Mandalorian tag. If this unit is upgraded, you may deal 2 damage to a ground unit on attack. So she is a great upgrade holder. Keep in mind that we don't actually have to be playing real upgrades in our deck. We could somehow give her an experience token or a shield, and now she's pinging ground units, which is super cool. It's on curve, so a 4-costed 4/5 is great. If you guys, I think it was the Yeti from last set. I really liked the 4-cost 4/5. I always saw it go round and round in the draft. I'm like, you guys are crazy. A 4/5 is really good stats. You should take those stats. And just having those stats makes it a C+. And because it has this upside where it makes your upgrades, if you are running them, a little better. But most importantly, if I give experience tokens or something to her, she becomes kind of insane. So we're going to give her a B. This card is strong. Should always go in your red-white deck. Next up, we got our Poe Dameron. He is a 5-costed 6/6 resistance unit. So his tag is pretty irrelevant. But on attack, it's modal, which is one of our first modal cards on a unit, which is really cool. Discard up to 3 cards from your hand. For each card discarded this way, choose a different option. Deal 2 damage to a unit or base, defeat an upgrade, or an opponent discards a card from their hand. I'll say all these effects are besides the discarding a card from your opponent's hand. So that's the one I feel like I'm going to be using the most. I'm going to be swing tapping with it, swinging. Having great stats, by the way, and I can just discard 1 card from my hand and make my opponent discard a card from their hand. That's actually a pretty annoying effect for our opponent, especially when I'm doing this every turn. This card kills and doesn't die to pretty much everything, and it has these niche other effects where sometimes I can kill an upgrade, sometimes I can get that extra 2 damage to a unit and ping it away, sometimes it becomes lethal. This card, modal cards in card games are very, very good. Let's just say that. They're very, very good. Giving yourself all these options every turn is strong. And this guy is above rate stats. This is a powerful card. We're giving Mr. Poe an A. Yeah, really good card. It is a legendary, so probably should be good. Also means we're not going to see it that often, but hey, it's a good card. Next up, we have Wrecker. It is a 6-costed 7/6 Fringe Clone Ground unit. Boom! Has Overwhelm. You may defeat a friendly resource. If you do, deal 5 damage to a ground unit. Wow! Wrecker. This card's great. It has on-rate stats. It has Overwhelm for on-rate stats. And on-play, kill something. Who cares we're losing a resource? I don't think that matters at all. Dealing 5 damage is nuts. This card is probably the strongest card that Red-White has to offer. And because of that, and because it's a huge unit that kills something, it impacts the board right away, I'm giving this card an S. If you see Wrecker, you should be very inclined to be playing Red-White now, because you're going to have this turn on 6 resources where you totally take over the game, playing a huge thing, and killing your opponent's 5-cost card is pretty crazy. So, good job, Wrecker. We get our S, first S of the video. Next up, we have Heroic Resolve. Attached unit gains action. Defeat Heroic Resolve. Attack with this unit. It gains +4/+0 and gains Overwhelm for this attack. So, you know, a 1-costed +1/+1 upgrade is an F-, but it has this effect where it lets me kill my own upgrade. I like killing upgrades because I don't like them. And it gets +4/+0 and Overwhelm. And if I kind of put that into perspective, that I'm like, hey, I'm getting a +1/+1 now, and hopefully I don't get 2-for-1s, which is a big hope, but then I get to, you know, +4/+0 Overwhelm and trade up. I like that it has that secondary effect that I can activate kind of whenever. And because of that, I'm going to give this card a D, but it's a D-, guys. I don't like upgrades. You will be trapped sometimes. Should I have like another upgrade rant? Sometimes I feel like I need like a little one every video. The problem with upgrades is if our opponent plays a removal spell, we lost 2 cards, which is really bad, and that's how you can like lose games instantly. Another problem with upgrades is our opponent needs to have cards that are so much weaker than what we just upgraded that they can't kill them. Another problem with upgrades is whenever behind on the board, I have nothing to attach my upgrade to because I don't have units. So I'd have to play a unit first, hope my opponent doesn't kill it, and then play an upgrade. It's kind of the same problem as you guys saw as that black spell from the last set that takes an Imperial unit, deals damage to a unit, and then you need another Imperial to do the same damage to the same unit. Like some people really like that card, but the problem with that card is I need to have a unit on the field. And sometimes you don't have a unit on the field. So upgrades are really niche in that perspective, and they have a huge downside of getting 2-for-1s. So like you don't want many upgrades in your deck. They're just really bad. But anyway, this card has an effect that's like kind of cool. I like that it kills itself and does something like way above rate. The Overwhelm could kill our opponent. This is a good aggressive card. If your deck's very aggressive, put this card in your deck, I guess. But it's very cuttable and might not even make it in that case. So we're giving it a D and moving on. Next up, we have Cripple Authority. Draw card. Each opponent who controls more resources than you discards a card from their hand. I mean, sure, I'm 2-for-1ing my opponent, but like in a weird way. I don't really like this card at all. I think it's hard for my opponent to have more resources than I do, unless I don't resource. Excuse me, and I think that I usually want to be with the same resources. In the late game, it's kind of cool that I can draw a card and make my opponent discard a card. Do I want to play this card in the late game just to do that with 2 of my resources out of like my 6 when I'm behind on resources? Probably not. I probably want to be playing like some guy. So like this card is only good when you have less resources than your opponent and you're winning on the board. Weird to think about. I'm going to give this card an F. Maybe can come out in the sideboard against really control decks. Yeah, I don't know. Next up, we have Cassian Andor. Is a 3-costed 3/5 Rebel unit. Has Smuggle, which is really nice. And when played using Smuggle, ready this unit. So, you know, a 3-cost should be a 3/4, so it's a little bit above rate. And it has Smuggle, so that's cool. Has an upside with Smuggle that it comes in ready, which is a fine effect. You know, it's still below cost for a 5-cost unit, but again, you're kind of playing it for free because it's coming out of your resources. I like this card. Should go in your deck 100% of the time. It's a B then, but you know, it's not like super powerful game-changing card that's going to win you the game, and that's why it's not an A or an S. Next up, we have Heroic Renegade. It's a 2-cost 2/3 with grit. I don't know how much value you're ever going to get off the grit, but we're playing this turn 1. It's totally fine card. Playable. It's a C. It goes in your deck if you need more 2 costs. Assault. Valiant Assault Ship is a 4-costed 3/4 space ship unit. Has Saboteur, which is not as relevant in space, but it has it. And if the defending player controls more resources than you, this unit gets +2/+0 for this attack. Okay, swing in for 5 is really good. When does our opponent have more resources than us, though? Probably not into the later game. I don't know. I think a 4-costed 3/4 spaceship is below rate, and it makes the card not as good. I think it has some upside later in the game. So, those two things I think just mix together to a C. I think this card is just fine. It's nothing crazy. Even in the late game when it gets its effect, is nothing crazy. Next up, we have Desperado Freighter. Is a 5-costed 5/6. Now here's a spaceship that has good stats. So for 1 more cost than the last card, we're getting +2/+2 in stats, which is really nice. And yeah, I like this card. It has no text box at all, but that is totally fine. This card should probably be in your deck 100% of the time, maybe 95% of the time. I'm going to give it a B. It's really good. It has good stats, guys. It's hard to kill, and hitting your opponent for 5 every turn is nice. Whew! I'm cooking. Cooking, guys. All right, we're finally on to the red cards. Sadly, the double reds are not in order, so I'm going to be jumping around to get to them. But I always start with the double red cards. So here we are, the Chaos of War. These double red cards usually get 2 ratings. 1 for if I was just playing, a red leader with a red base, and then 1 where I'm just having, 1 red symbol total. Which is most of the time it's hard to play double red in pre-release. In draft, sometimes you can swing it, but even still, it's kind of hard. All right, so deal damage to each player's base equal to the number of cards in that player's hand, so you're hurting yourself as well. For 5 resources, this card is absolute dog water, probably one of the worst cards I've ever read in my life. For 3 resources, it's still pretty bad. I mean, if you're an insanely aggressive deck, you're going to want this in a double red package. I think this card has a lot more use in Constructed than it does in pre-release. Usually, you don't want to be spending 5 resources to deal 3, 4, 5 damage to our opponent. That feels like I'm doing nothing, to be honest. And my opponent at the same time for 5 resources playing like a 5/6 unit that hits us for 5 every turn. Like, that's going to be a lot better, right? So this card is an F, Super F, Mega F card. And even in double red, I think I'm still going to give it an F, because it's just 3 resources do nothing. Next up, we got Wild Rancor. Rancor. We got a 6-costed 6/8 creature, double red, Overwhelm. When played, deal 2 damage to each other ground unit. That includes your ground units, by the way. I actually kind of like this card for 8 resources. It impacts the board because it deals 2 damage to other things, which is good. It sucks that it hurts our things, but I think it can pick off our opponent's weak stuff. I mean, you're the one playing this card, so you can direct it. You can, manipulate the board for that 2 damage to be what you want it to be. So I think costing 8, this card is playable. I mean, sometimes makes the cut if you have better cards that cost 8 around that curve. So it's probably like a C-ish plus at that instance. But if this card, if you are playing double red, this card is an auto include, and it's like a B plus A. So it gets like a whole extra rating if we're playing double red, which is usually how the double spells cost. But yeah, so I'd play this card off aspect for sure. Would I play it for 10? Probably not, but I would play this card if I was just playing a red deck. And our last double red card is the leader, but in unit form. It is a 2-costed 3/3 Mandalorian unit. When defeated, for each player with 15 or more damage on their base, draw a card. So, highest ceiling can draw 2 cards on death. In a double red deck, this card is solid. It's going to be a B because it's above rate on stats and sometimes draws a card. For 4 resources, I was really trying to think about this today. For 4 resources, would I play a 3/3 that draws 1 to 2 cards on death? And maybe sometimes I would, but I really don't like those stats, guys. So I think I'm going to give her a D when I'm playing her for 4 resources. But, when you do draw those 2 cards, maybe it works its way to a C, but I think it's too niche, right? D is the niche rating. It doesn't mean we don't play those cards. it means that we just cut them sometimes, right? So yeah, she definitely gets cuttable. Sorry. All right, guys, let's talk about just the single red cards. It's the longest stretch of the video, but here we are. Hopefully, we stay under an hour this time. The last video was long as, yeah. All right, so we got Reckless Gunslinger, a 1-costed unit, 2/1, 1 played, deal 1 damage to each base, and has Smuggle for 3 in a red. This card is pretty awful to play from your hand. I think you want to do it almost none of the time. Yes, it is a turn 1 play, but literally dies to everything, has only 1 health, and only swings for 2, so it doesn't even kill that much. You know, if that was the whole card, it would be an F, but it has Smuggle, and I think it's, even though we're playing it for free at some point in the game, it doesn't really impact the board that much, and hurts ourselves. I think I'm going to settle on a D. I think sometimes when you don't have many 2-drops, you put this card in your deck. And, you know, if you do draw your 2-drop, you can put in your Smuggle and you can feel okay about it later. But I'm not loving this card. It's a D. I said I want to go faster and I spent forever just on 1 card. But, you know, that's what we do in this video. You guys are driving to work or something and I'm just talking at you. All right, we got a 1-costed 3/2 Stolen Land Speeder. When played, if you play this unit from your hands, an opponent steals it from you. And Bounty, if you own this unit, play it from your discard pile for free and give an experience token to it. So the scenario is I play it, I give it to my opponent. Let's say I kill it with something and now I get it back and I have a 4/3. The big problem with this card is when I play it, my opponent gets it. So if you guys can imagine the normal turn sequence, I play a 3/2, they play a 3/2. Oh, here's my 3/2. You have 2 3/2s, I have nothing. Okay, your turn. Oh, I take 6. I play 3/4. They play 4/3 or something. And then I'm like, okay, I swing my 3/4 into your Land Speeder. It comes back. It has an experience token, yay, but I actually have to play it. And it comes in rested, so now I'm not really getting value from it. Right? So, I don't know. Is that sequence good? Because what happens in the scenario where our opponent kills our 3-drop? Somehow with like a spell or something. Oh, then I just lose the game. So yeah, I don't know. I don't really like this card at all. I think it's like high risk, minimal reward. Like you're getting a kind of okay unit back. Thinking about playing this card in the late game makes me want to cringe. Like, here's a card. Here you go. I'll try to kill it at some point. So I'm gonna give this card an F. I don't know if my explanation made sense, but you guys were here anyway. Next up, we got the House Cast Soldier. It is a 2-costed 2/3 Mandalorian Trooper unit with Saboteur. All right, it's fine. Nothing really to talk about. It's a C. It's playable. It has, you know, it's a 2-cost that can go in my deck. Next up, we got Migs Mayfield. Is a 2-cost 2/2 Underworld. Being below stats as 2 costs is a really bad downside, but it says when a player discards a card from their hand, you may deal 2 damage to a unit or base. So if we're playing Kylo and our opponent played a 3/2, I can use Kylo's effect to turn the card in my hand into a 2 damage removal spell, which is pretty decent. So let's say outside of a Kylo deck, this card's an F. It's below stats as a 2-cost, which is terrible, but it has this nice upside play around in a Kylo Ren deck. So in Kylo Ren, this is a playable card. I wouldn't even say it's that good because it still has bad stats, but it's a playable card in Kylo Ren. Outside of Kylo, don't play that card. Next up, we got the Rokai Gunship. It is a 2-cost space unit, 2/1. Has the Underworld tag. When defeated, deal 1 damage to a unit or base. So I play this, even if my opponent plays a 3-costed spaceship, it actually trades with it because it could deal 1 damage. I like that 1 damage can go anywhere. It can go to either player's base, but it can go to any unit on ground or space. I like that versatility, but again, the card's just a 2/1. It dies to everything, and it doesn't have that big of a board impact. I'm just going to say this is just a playable spaceship and give it a C. Next up, we got Unlicensed Headhunter. It is a 2-costed space unit, 3/2 Saboteur. When this unit is exhausted, it gains bounty, heal 5 damage from your base. The bounty heal 5s are the best bounties to put in your deck. You usually don't care if your opponent's healing 5, especially if our unit, you know, was able to do 6 to them, like it still did something. I like that it's a 3/2. It's an on-rate spaceship. Yeah, on-rate spaceship, sure, C. Let's move on. The healing 5 again kind of negates its aggroness potential, but it's still a 3/2 spaceship. Next up, we got Clan Challengers. It is a 5-costed 3/6 Mandalorian unit with Raid 3. While this unit is upgraded, it gains Overwhelm. Okay, so when I upgrade this unit, it becomes a lot better. Raid 3 means it's swinging for 6, which is a lot. Yeah, I don't know. It's kind of just a whatever card, right, guys? Like, 6 health, it means it's probably living, and then it's swinging for 6, which is a lot. And it doesn't have Overwhelm most of the time, maybe 20% of the time it has Overwhelm. But it's just a big thing. But our opponent can, like, kind of attack into it with, like, no worry. Like, if they're playing, like, a 4/5 from the turn before, they're kind of just trading and making it low. And, yeah. So we're just going to give it a C. It's just playable. Again, nothing special. Next up, we have another IG unit. We have IG-11. Cannot be captured. It is a 5-costed 6/5 ground unit. If this unit would be captured, it cannot be. Defeat him and deal 3 damage to each enemy ground unit instead. That's a really good effect? Question mark. So, like, again, if my opponent captures my unit, I kind of want to get my unit back. But this guy says, no, you can't capture me. I'm dead instead. It kind of turns, like, it lets your opponent just, like, kill this for free. But they do take 3 damage to each ground unit. So, you know, it's like a weird, it's like a good and bad effect, sort of. And I'm not really sure how to evaluate that. Like, obviously, it's insane if it can kill things, like multiple things, instead of being captured. But then when our opponent just, like, not choose to capture it, and I guess that's kind of the point. But that puts all the power with our opponent, right? Like, they get to decide if they want to capture and deal the 3 damage or not do that. So I don't like giving my opponent the power. But also has, on attack, you may deal 3 damage to a damaged ground unit. Ugh, it says damaged. If it wasn't damaged, that'd be a lot better. This card is solid, though. We're going to give it a B. I think if it just said 3 damage to anything, I might even move it to an A, because that's just super annoying for our opponent. Especially because I can just hit base and, you know, kill something else, which is crazy. So we're going to give this card a B. It's a very strong card, don't get me wrong. Pretty much always goes in your red deck. It's a good 5-cost. Next up, we have Covetous Rivals. It is a 6-costed unit, 5/5 grit. When played and on attack, you may deal 2 damage to a unit with a bounty. This card has bad stats. It has grit, but it's hard to make use of the grit. You can deal 2 damage to units with bounty, which is really cool. You could say that's board impactful, but first you need your opponent to have bounty cards or be giving them bounty. I don't really like this card. I think it's a little bit too niche for me. I'm going to give it a D. If you guys have this weird bounty play around deck, then obviously it goes up a lot in points. But next up, we have the Krayt Dragon, a 9-costed ground unit, 10/10 overwhelmed creature. When an opponent plays a card, you may deal damage equal to that card's cost to their base or a ground unit they control, which is really nice. It is a legendary, so you will not be seeing this card that often. Okay, guys, so obviously, if you play this card and resolve it, you'll have a really, you'll just, like, win? Question mark? Like, our opponent could play a removal spell, but they're going to be taking, like, 6, 4, 5 damage. If they try to play units, they just die. I don't know. This card costs 9, but in the games that you get to 9 resources and can resolve this card, you pretty much always win the game. So, yeah, how do you evaluate that? How do you evaluate a card that costs 9, but, like, kind of instant wins you the game? I think in draft and pre-release, in the slower formats, if you can make your deck last long to that point, this card's going to feel really solid. I think I'm going to give this card an A. Oh, it's so difficult. Like, I don't think it can be an S because it costs so much. And I think sometimes I might even cut this card because it just wouldn't belong in my deck, right? And like a B is something that I'm not really cutting, right? And a C is playable, and I could sometimes cut it. And an A is a super powerful card, but I can literally imagine myself like not always running this when I open it, which is weird. I don't know. I'm going to stick with an A. I think that we want to make a deck that can run Krayt Dragon because then I'll just win the game. First off, it swings for 10, which is a stupid number and has overwhelm, so our opponents are just dying, and they can't really play the game anymore after we play it. It's kind of an unfun card overall, like hard to cast and then hard for my opponent to do anything. Though, if we are playing best 2 out of 3 and my opponent does see it, they'll definitely keep the removal spells for it, and that could feel really bad, which is why I'm nervous on that card's rating. All right, next up we got Guild Target. It is an upgrade, 0 cost upgrade. Gives +0/+0. Attached unit gains bounty. Deal 2 damage to a base. If this unit is unique, deal 3 damage instead. Here's like another bounty payoff. It costs 0. Just costs a card from your hand. Its effect is pretty dog, I think. Like enough to say that it's an F. I think that you could try to do some bounty build arounds. And I guess this card would go in that deck. But I think that deck would be bad. So don't do it. Next up, we have Hotshot DL44 Blaster. Is a 1 cost upgrade that isn't an F. Are you guys excited? Attached to a non-vehicle unit, has Smuggle 3 and a yellow. Cunning symbol, that's interesting. And when played using Smuggle, attack with attached unit. So I actually like this card for its Smuggle effect, because at some point in the game, you can decide to say, hey, I'm swinging with this unit, and it has +2. And it's immediate and instant. You didn't see it coming. The card wasn't from my hand. It's from the resources. Because of that, I'm actually going to give this card a C. It's, I think, one of the higher upgrade ratings I can give an upgrade. I think this card is playable in yellow. I want to say in yellow. So this is not good in a red deck. Do not put this card if you are not playing yellow. I know I'm rating this with the reds, but this is a yellow card. It always gets resourced. And then you can use that effect sometime throughout the game. Like this card is barely a C as well. It does get cut sometimes, but like, you know, it's just a nice card to resource to get some value off. And I can see this going in a lot of yellow builds, not red decks. It is not a red card. This card as a red card is an F triple-. Okay. Armed to the Teeth is a 2 cost upgrade. +2/+0. This one also has Smuggle, which is good for upgrades. Attached unit gains on attack. Give another friendly unit +2/+0 for the phase. I think this card is pretty bad. Again, it's an F out of hand. Out of Smuggle, it's like an F+. I don't know. It's free value from Smuggle, but it costs 4, which is a lot. And you can say, hey, it's giving the same +2/+0 as the last card, but you know the other thing is swings immediately, and this doesn't. So, and now we're getting 2 for 1, but our opponent can answer the thing, and it's not getting any health. Yeah, I don't know, guys. Not really a fan of this card. I'll give it a D-. You know, sure. Armed to the Teeth. You play it, but again, we're playing it from Smuggle. We're not playing a card from hand. Don't play a card from hand. F triple-. Death Mark is a 2 cost upgrade. Attach unit gains bounty, draw 2 cards. All right, so here's the first question. Would I pay 2 resources to draw 2 cards? Ask yourself, how many of you played Mission Briefing in the last format? That card is probably a D. 3 resources to draw 2. 2 resources to draw 2 is obviously better, but I need to first attach it to a unit and then kill that unit. So it's a delayed draw 2. Mission Briefing was really good in the late game. When I had a bunch of resources, I played it, and I was able to do stuff immediately. This card is not a catchback up card, because I have to put it on my enemy's card and then kill it. I think this card is an F. We do not want to be playing Death Mark. Next up, we have... You guys are going to be so excited. It is an upgrade. It's a 3-costed upgrade. Vambrace Flamethrower, +1/+1. Can't go on vehicles. Attached unit gains on attack. You may deal 3 damage divided as you choose among enemy ground units. I'm actually going to give this card an S rating for an upgrade, which is a C. Okay, it's not obviously an S, but it's a C. This card is a playable upgrade. Even though you are risking yourself getting 2 for 1s, you are also having this insane ceiling where you get to deal 3 damage to ground units every time you attack. The +1/+1 might just put it out of range of being killed immediately. If you played on a 2-3 that you played on turn 2 and made it into a 3-4, and now your opponent's going to be really sad because you're dealing 3 damage all the time. It's really strong when you attack with it. But again, all upgrades do have the downside of our opponents stealing them, our opponents killing them, our opponents killing our unit. So again, I'm giving it the highest rating an upgrade can usually get, which is a C because of its great upside. Next up, we have Desperate Attack. 1 costed attack with a damaged unit. It gets +2/+0 for this attack. Even if the unit didn't have to be damaged, it would still be an F. Do not put that card in your deck. It is terrible. Absolutely trash tier card. Keep it out of your deck. Next up, we have Detention Block Rescue. It is a 3-costed Gambit event. Deal 3 damage to a unit. If that unit is guarding any capture cards, deal 6 damage instead. 3 to deal 3 is a little bit below rate, but it's premium. I like having removal, so we're going to give this card a B. If it gets to shoot something that's, guarding a captured unit, probably an A's worth of value for the card, but just going to stay at a B. Put this card in all your red decks. Dealing 3 damage is good. We're almost there, guys. Next up, we have Pillage. Choose a player. They discard 2 cards from their hand. Okay, this card is pretty bad. In a really aggressive deck in the late game, I can kind of get rid of my opponent's hand, but do remember that we're drawing 2 cards a turn, and I'm paying 4 resources to do nothing with my turn. So yes, I got rid of my opponent's hand. But this card's usually, again, only good when we're ahead on board, our opponent's a little bit behind, and they're trying to catch back up with some late game cards. I'd say this card is a D out of the sideboard and an F in the main board. You want to side it against super control-y decks that you'll be ahead on the board, and they're playing these late game cards that you're going to try to punish them and discard from their hand. Next up, we got Bravado. It is a 5-costed event. If you defeated an enemy unit this phase, this event costs 2 less to play. Ready a unit. Even if this card costed 1 to 0, I would consider not playing this card. Untapping a unit is not that good. I mean, obviously, it can lead to crazy things like swing 6, swing 6. That seems like a win more strategy to me, or like, I barely got there. It's kind of like a sneaky game strategy. But again, this card doesn't cost 1, it costs 5. I don't like Bravado. I don't like spending an entire card to untap something. F. Moving on. We got Daring Raid. It is a 1-costed tactic. Deal 2 damage to a unit or base. Dealing 2 is not a lot, but it is something. It is still removal. Sometimes it can hit base for a game. This card is just playable. I can see you resourcing it a lot of the time, but sometimes 2 damage is just what you need to finish off a unit. So it is C. One of the lowest ratings removal can get. And wow, the last 2 cards, guys. We have Wanted Insurgents. It is a 3-costed 4/4 rebel unit. Bounty, deal 2 damage to a unit. This one has the worst kind of bounty. I don't want to be taking 2 damage to any of my units. It is only 1 above rate, right? A 3 cost should be a 3/4 or 4/3. I'm not really in love with this card. I think I'm going to play it sometimes and cut it more than I play it, and we're going to give this card a D. I don't like its bounty effect. I'd much rather, if it said like heal 5, my opponent heals 5, then yeah, sure, I'd like this card a lot because it's above rate, but dealing 2 damage to a unit, not good. Finally, we have Hunting Nexu. It is a 4-costed 4/4 ground unit creature. While you control another red unit, this unit gains raid 2. So if we don't control a red unit, it's fine. It's like 1 below rate, but I see a lot of 4/4s. Sometimes it's going to be a 6/4 on attacks, which is cool, nothing special. This card's a pretty good example of just a C, a card that you put in your deck to have a 4 drop in. It's not like you're super excited to play it, but you will play it sometimes. And yes, we did it, guys. We got through all the red cards. Super exciting. Next up, I think, is green, and lastly is yellow, and all like the quote-unquote generic cards for hero, villainy, and the real generics. Yeah, wow. I'm tired, guys. I'm still recovering from my sickness, and I'm glad I wasn't coughing as much this video. I'm on super cough medicine, so we're holding strong. But yeah, guys, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. If you've made it this far, tell me in the comments. Be like, Spencer, I did actually watch the whole video, and thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Hopefully I am helpful or just fun to listen to for you guys' pre-releases and drafts that are coming up. Thanks so much for watching, guys, and as always, peace.